Well, hello. Today I'd like to do a little book review of Robert Jordan's The Eye of the World. This book was an investment, not in money, but in time. It's the first in a 14-book series. Yeah. But I watched some booktubers and they uniformly say good things about it, so I decided to try it. Now, I've actually owned this copy for a number of years. It was in the used bookstore in Dickinson. Or not used bookstore, but library where they sell old books. And I picked it up because I remember seeing this series of covers when I was in high school in bookstores. And I've never been a huge fantasy reader. I read some, but I don't read a lot. So I thought, oh, I'll pick this up and I'd read it one of these days. And a pandemic happened, multiple summers happened, and reading it never happened. And for some reason this fall, I just decided, I'm going to do it. I was going to wait till Christmas break to start it, but for some reason, I'd just finished a book. I said, well, let's do this thing. So yeah, I'm on book number, I think 5 in the series, 5 or 6 in the series right now, The Lord of Chaos. And so obviously I've stuck with it. So the publication date of this is 1990. So a little backstory. See, I write stuff down. In 1954, J.R.R. Tolkien published his Lord of the Rings trilogy. It was a work of what they call high fantasy, and it had very intricate world building. In the decades that followed, there were derivative works such as Terry Brooks' Sword of Shannara, which is perfectly readable. Neil Hancock created a more original but nowadays lesser known series of books called Circle of Light. And then 1994 saw the publication of Robert Jordan's Eye of the World, the first of, like I said, what became a 14-book series, collectively known as The Wheel of Time. Sadly, the author, Robert Jordan, did die before he finished it, but he knew he was dying, and so he left behind extensive notes, and he chose Brian Sanderson to finish it, which he did with 3 books. This book does share a lot with Lord of the Rings, and Robert Jordan, in his interviews, was quite open about this. He was very honest about the origin, but he definitely went in his own direction with it. Fantasy is always going to be compared to J.R.R. Tolkien. That's just the way it's going to be. So we're all standing on the we are all standing on the shoulders of giants. So I'm going to address some of those parallels, and I'll talk a little bit about the television series. First, I wanted to actually talk about this first book. So for full disclosure, I think I said that I wrote down, when I wrote the review, I was on book 5, so I'm apparently on book 6. So there's some fancy prologue, a little bit of what the heck is going on here. But then the book takes us to Emmons Field, a small village in a remote region called the Two Rivers. People there don't really travel outside and don't know much about what lays beyond their region. So I identify with that. I live in rural North Dakota, and in a remote part of rural North Dakota. They're an insular people. They don't even have the internet. They're mostly shepherds. They grow tobacco, which is a crop that people smoke. And we meet the central characters there. Most are a little more than teenagers from this isolated village. Older teenagers, but teenagers. The central characters are 3 young men and 2 young women from the village. And additionally, we meet an Aes Sedai, who's basically a lady wizard, named Moraine, and her warder, Lon. Lon's like a bodyguard. A little more to it, but, that's the basic idea. So these are young and naive kids who find their bucolic little village suddenly attacked by Trollocs. And these are monstrous hybrids of human and animal. And yeah, we're talking parallels. I think if you've read Lord of the Rings, you saw more than a few parallels right there in that description. So you get to know the characters a little bit as Moraine, this powerful lady wizard takes them away from the village. But she's mysterious and keeping a lot from the villagers. So there's a lot of needless controversy over that. She's just too secretive, which is one of the things I didn't like about her. But the trouble here is you have too many characters in one place to really get to know them. Egwene and Rand clearly like each other. Lan is a tough guy. Matt is naughty. And Perrin is a blacksmith. But we learn that these young people, and yes, one name is missing right now, are Tavarin, which I probably mispronounced that. These are people who weave the tapestry of life around them. Most people are kind of woven into the pattern of life. There's a big theme about that in all the books. Some very Eastern ideas on cycles and so forth, reincarnation. So these are people who can actually weave the tapestry around them. They can influence others. So on that note, one of the young men is also the Dragon Reborn. So the Dragon Reborn is a male who can channel, so a male wizard. He can do magic stuff, and he's supposed to defeat the Dark One, this sort of ultimate evil who is imprisoned but plotting to escape. The Dark One had previously, the last time he got loose, poisoned the male half of the magic. So any males who perform magic end up going insane. So part of what these lady wizards do is they go around looking for men who are able to channel magic, and they gentle them, which means they cut off their access to the magic, so they can no longer practice magic. Now, the book at the beginning made reference to the original dragon, Lews Therin, and he was insane in that little scene that they started the book with. He had destroyed his family, killed everybody, and the villain was trying to get him to remember it, and he was too insane really to remember it, what he had done. So the story actually takes place in a broken world that was created by locking up the Dark One. It's called The Breaking of the World. Thanks to the male wizards of the day who slowly went insane but had all this magical power, continents rose and sank, mountains rose and fell, technology was lost, and humanity had to restart in a broken world. This story takes place about 3,000 years after the breaking of the world. I don't think the book really kept it a secret who the Dragon Reborn was going to be. I mean, you kind of have one obvious main character out of everybody I just mentioned. He gets a lot of time, a lot of viewpoint, spends a lot of time during the Trolloc invasion with his father, and his father saying goofy things that show up later, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Now, I don't know, maybe it's because I watched the TV series first, but, you know, I thought it was pretty obvious, and you get to see in hindsight the little hints that are dropped along the way that, oh yeah, he's channeling right now. So the book really took off for me when the characters were finally forced to disperse. So they were forced into smaller groups that gave them a great chance to actually interact and shine in their own chapters. That's where I started to like the book. And it's at this time we also bring in our final character from Emond's Field, Nynaeve. She's the wisdom of the village, which basically means lady healer who may or may not be able to do some magic and is generally bossy. And she's a very bossy character. She's by book 6, she's finally aware of it at least, but she is hard to like, just be honest. So yeah, she's a bossy know-it-all. She followed them to find these 4 young people that have been taken out of the village and take them back, because, you know, we're not doing this. You're coming back to the village here, young man. But of course, by then they'd all been dispersed. So she happens upon Moraine and Lan. Matt and Rand and a gleeman named Tom travel together. So Gleeman is basically a traveling minstrel and performer. That they'd picked him up somewhere along the way. Tom takes on kind of a fatherly role. I didn't think Matt was properly expressed in this book, especially because he spends a lot of the book under the influence of black magic, and so you don't really get to know Matt really during this book, not the real Matt. So you get to know him more later in other books. Egwene and Perrin are kind of an odd couple. Again, Perrin's the blacksmith. Egwene is a young woman from the village that Rand is sort of betrothed to. So they travel and wander and meet interesting people. A major feature of their story is they meet the peddlers, who are a peaceful people and end up playing a major role several books later. They also find out, hey, Perrin can talk to wolves. So Matt and excuse me, Matt and Rand end up picking up an ogier, which is like a giant creature that likes to read a lot. And I'll be honest, the Matt/Rand thread of this book story shows one of the weaknesses of this book. Too much time spent on every single village or farm where they spend the night. I get it. We got to perform to make money to get a night. Oh, we got to convince a farmer to let us stay, so we'll do a little work. Oh, whoopsie, the farmer's daughter is hitting on these two young men and the farmer doesn't like it. You know, it just got to be too much. And overall, I thought there was just too much time spent on description of clothing and jewelry, etc. You know, I don't really care about all the jewelry that they're wearing unless it actually matters. So, anyway, toward the end, they do come together, back into the big group. We meet some more cultures. There's stops in several major cities. These young people are like, oh, that's a city! That's big! And, yep, you get it there, country bumpkin. And so they come back together and they travel into what's called the Blight. That's a corrupted land where, you know, the Dark One is apparently chained up there somewhere. The people on the borderlands are preparing to fight a major Trolloc invasion. And they visit the Eye of the World. They meet a good monster. It's made out of, like, trees and flowers and stuff. And the Dragon Reborn is revealed, but he's not ready to share with everybody who he is. So, I tried to do that as non-spoilery as possible. So, I found the ending very confusing. I felt like it needed some editing and rewriting, because I wasn't totally clear what was going on for parts of that ending. But this book does show the infancy of some great world building, a well-considered magic system. I'll tell you, one of the reasons I usually prefer science fiction, especially harder science fiction, is that they have real-world constraints. You know, spaceships don't just stop. Spaceships aren't like ships only in space. We've got Newton's laws going on. If we're going to go traveling faster than light, we got to figure out a way to explain that. You know, generally science fiction is forced to have at least some structure, and I realize some science fiction is just fantasy with a science fiction veneer over it, but you know, in generally, that's why I like science fiction, because I've read some fantasy where you're just like, oh, you need to get out of this, well, we're just going to whip up this magic thing here so you can get out of it, and then we'll never hear of it again. And that's why I shy away from a lot of fantasy. But this one has a well-defined magic system and clear rules of magic. Rules just make the universe work, whether it's science fiction or fantasy. And I think good fantasy can be as good science fiction. So let's get back to a couple parallels. I said we'd definitely see some Lord of the Rings here. So in what way do we do that? So to start with, isolated bucolic community, like the Shire. Yeah, only this time we're going to call it Two Rivers, and instead of being short people with hairy feet, they're just young people. But yeah, both are isolated bucolic places that are pretty innocent of what's going on in the world. Robert Jordan has Trollocs, they're creepy hybrids of humans and animals. Tolkien has trolls and orcs. And there's been a couple different stories about orcs. Either they're corrupted elves or something else. But yeah, you need your bad guy army. I guess you can use people, but a lot of science fiction writers like to create something like a troll or a orc or a Trolloc. Or we'll come up with a new name, which I guess that's what Trolloc is. So yeah, parallel there. Tolkien had 9 Nazgul. These were the corrupted humans that dressed all in black and do mean things. Jordan has the Myrddraal, something like that. Eyeless figures that are all in black. He has an unlimited army of them, but, you know, same kind of idea. They're the brains. They're like the lieutenants of the Dark One, which is another similarity, because we have to have this ultimate evil dude, because it has to be a dude. And then Robert Jordan also includes the Forsaken. These were specific servants of the Dead One that were chosen to serve him. Humans that got special magical privileges because they served him. So, you know, maybe they're closer to the Nazgul than the Myrddraal. I don't know, but they do have more personality than any of the Nazgul and Tolkien. You know, they're each individual, well-fleshed-out characters rather than scary pagans. Shire. You know, they actually talk, and, you know, some of them flirt, and some of them get defeated, some of them get humiliated. You know, there's a lot to them. Tolkien, you know, of course, had Lord Sauron. Jordan has the Dark One, also known as Shaitan or Baalzamon, which I'm pretty sure that's meant to sound like Beelzebub. And it's also worth noting that Amazon is producing a TV series based on these books. They've done the first season already. The second season is filming, and they've already agreed that they're going to make a third season. Now, just anytime you adapt a book, you have to make changes, you have to compress, you have to put stuff together. And, you know, purists don't like that. Some people didn't like that the recent Lord of the Rings movies excluded Tom Bombadil. I didn't think it was any great loss myself. So yeah, it's not going to be compared to the books one-to-one. The two media are just too different from each other. So they're kind of compressing events. The first series of this show takes events from books 1 and 2 and puts them together. Instead of traveling to multiple large cities, they just go to one large city. And they had some trouble with the whole COVID thing during filming that messed up a lot of their plans. You know, it's an American production, so the actors are all uniformly pretty, boys and the girls. The dragon is the prettiest of the boys, even though in the TV series they try to make it less obvious that he's the dragon, but he's clearly the main character. And they try to distract us, saying, well, the Dragon Reborn could be male or female, but that's not how Jordan wrote it. More importantly, the TV series, yeah, like I said, saw it as a mystery. More interesting part in the books to me was how the dragon deals with it, and how others deal with it when they find out what he is. Now, I will say I was pleased with how they remembered certain physical traits about the dragon and put them into the TV series by finding an actor who has these physical traits. The only one they really didn't get right, I looked up his height. Normally I don't care about an actor's height, but I was actually curious because he didn't look very big. He's about my height. The one who turns out to be the dragon is a very tall, big man. And you know, the actor, I'm not short, but yeah, I'm 6'3" if you really needed to know that. But the actor they chose to play the dragon is 6'3". He's basically my height. So they edited a lot of material out. I think they chose a lot of things to edit out that made sense. I did feel they added some time-wasting material, like they spent way too much time on a suicidal warder, and then his suicide, and then the mourning him, and it's just like, wasn't in the book. Don't care about this character who appears and then he's gone. Just don't care. I think they were trying to show the bond between the warder and the Aes Sedai, but I didn't get that out of it. Just left me cold. The story has, and they have to rewrite the story some to keep it going. And other than being uniformly pretty, like I said, I did think they chose the actors well. The one that's Lan, the warder, does look like a stoic warrior. Moraine does look like a classy lady. She does look older than the teenagers, which she is. Egwene is very pretty, and you can feel the attraction to her, and you can understand why Rand is attracted to her and why she's attracted to him. I thought the Matt Eric actor was pretty good, but sadly he decided to quit mid-season, so a lot of parts that were meant for him later on ended up going to other characters. So I don't know, I guess as a teacher I'm not going to quit mid-year and just say, yeah, screw this teaching thing. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to wait till my contract's out. I feel like you should see something through, but I don't know why he quit. There may have been something going on. I haven't heard why he quit. But they just kind of randomly dumped him at a door. Like, oh, guys, not going with you. What? You're not? Well, hold on, the door's closing. Ah! And that's it. So somehow they'll have to find a replacement actor. Find a way to get him back connected with everybody. And I thought Perrin was believable as a blacksmith. But instead of the nice, solid apprentice-mentor relationship from the book, we get a wife who he accidentally kills during the Trolloc attack before we ever get to know him. And so, I don't know, you kill your wife by accident. It's just gonna kind of, I don't know, leave an emotional mark. And I didn't feel like we got the payoff for that. And to do that before we're even invested in her, there was just nothing from that. It added nothing. When I first saw the show, I thought Nynaeve was too young, but now that I've read on in the books, I decided, no, they got that right after all. She is a very bossy woman, she is young. And probably because she's young, she has to compensate by being extra bossy. Let's see. Something else that worked was the Trolloc attack on the two rivers. I liked it because it came out of nowhere. The villagers are just celebrating, and wham! We got Trollocs in the village killing all of a sudden. And that's pretty much how it was in the book. And I liked that. Some critics have said, well, you needed to build up the suspense. And no, I thought it worked this way, just bam, out of nowhere, so you could feel the shock that the villagers are feeling. Moraine gets a chance to demonstrate her magic, and Lan gets to demonstrate how well he fights. The big battle at the end was, it was awful. It was entirely off screen in the book, and I thought they should have done that here. First we see soldiers charging out of a castle, running across the field, waving weapons. You're like, yeah, go to battle, you soldier people. Only, they're not going in to meet Trollocs. They're running across this plain to go into their second fortress, which is really skinny and stands in this really narrow valley. And then you're just like, what was that about? So I feel like that's where the COVID thing came in, because they maybe had filmed some of it before COVID, and then some of it they're just like, now what? Got a social distance. Can't have Trollocs everywhere. Because if you don't know, Trollocs are very susceptible to COVID. Anyway, and then 5 women stand socially distanced to channel magic and link their magic with each other to destroy the whole Trolloc force, which was charging, even though it was up there battling at the skinny fort, I thought. And, yeah, they start burning each other out, and, oh, I gotta pull off, and, yeah, whatever. And apparently they can bring people back to life in the show, which is not a thing in the books. Didn't like that. But I thought Rand's role in the ending did make sense. In the book, I said I had no clue what he was doing. But in the movie, or TV show, I thought it was clear. And it does end with the arrival of one of the big bads of Book 2, the Shan-Chan. So they used their magic to send a massive tsunami to kill some little girl who's randomly picking up shells on a beach. Didn't see the point of that other than, hey, look how bad these people are. They killed a little girl. So I have hopes for the series next season. You've heard me rant about the show in Pens and Use, I think. In the past, we've seen good TV shows go bad, like Game of Thrones. I did appreciate that this series does not use sexplanation, which is information dumping during graphic sex scenes. That's a favorite tactic of Game of Thrones. Oh, we gotta explain the political situation. Nobody wants to listen to that. How about you sit there while two naked women make out with each other and you explain the political situation to them? Then people will pay attention. So, and I thought they did decently restraining the violence. I mean, the violence is there, but... so I'm hoping this one can improve with time. As for the book, I do think it's worth reading. I enjoyed it, and like I said, I'm reading book 6 right now. It's detailed, it's well-imagined series. I have run into several YouTube channels devoted entirely to Wheel of Time content. There's a lot out there. There's a huge fandom. That kind of reminds me of the fandom of Star Wars or Star Trek. Only, more literary, because until recently it was just books. But it is a big reading investment, so I'm working my way through all 14 books. They do all appear to be at my local library, so I'm able to do that. And not reading anything else, really, at the moment, because it's a big time investment. But I will not just keep doing Wheel of Time, my book reviews. I have other book reviews written out from earlier in the year, so I'll talk about those books and intersperse some Wheel of Time content, but I will make it into a playlist. So, have you read Wheel of Time? What did you think? Or any comments on the series or anything else I brought up? Let us know down in the comments. So I want to thank you for watching. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.